Now, we actually lie to private industry and organized labor by saying that prison industry does not compete with you. Last year, federal and state prisoners produced $165 million worth of goods that state and federal government should have purchased from private business, much of which would have been produced with organized labor. I don't see why state and federal government should exploit prison labor. I don't see why the state of Texas should be allowed to use prison labor to build a building on a college campus at Sam Houston State College. I think prisoners ought to be used for this kind of work, but under organized labor and private industry supervision and paid minimum wages. Why can't prisoners support their own families? Why can't prisoners pay restitution to the people they hurt? We're concerned about the victims of crime. How better can you inculcate responsibility in people who commit crime than have them assume some responsibility for those they hurt, as well as continuing to support their own families? So we're not talking about a multi-million-dollar increase in the cost of prisoners. We're talking about not only helping them carry their load while they're in prison, but preparing them for the job market outside. Now, you look at the Texas prison industry system, and you will find that less than 10% of the men coming out of the Texas prison are prepared for any kind of a skilled job in today's job market. And I think that's pretty sad to say that you have someone locked up for several years, rehabilitating them. They come out, they can't get a job, and every bit of penological research in America shows that the most important factor of why men commit more crimes when they come out of prison is that they can't get a good job. Our organization has, as one of its major programs, a program called Volunteers in Probation. And we have almost 200,000 people in America now working in criminal courts and in juvenile courts, serving as volunteers working with probationers, and we're now trying to introduce it as volunteers in parole. We're trying to get prison systems to let women volunteers as well as men into the prisons for men. We want women volunteers in institutions for juveniles. A part of those volunteers, we hope, will be people who have been victimized by crime, because we want the victims of crime to see that the best way to protect them is to develop a rehabilitation system which does change behavior and attitudes. And while we can get, and we do have now, some victims, people who have been robbed, people who have been mugged and hurt, who have turned around and said, well, look, first I want to see whether your system works. Are you just concerned about criminals, or are you worried about victims? And if we can talk them into coming in and serving as a volunteer probation officer, they soon begin to see we're trying to make the system work in their behalf. Mm-hmm. And that can only be to make the offender better, not bitter and not worse. One of the best ways of making anyone responsible to someone else is to have him do something for someone else. And I don't know why correction and courts have been so reluctant to have the prisoners feel responsible for the people they hurt. And if a prisoner at minimum on low wages is supporting his family, he doesn't have much for the victim. But if he only has $5 a week or $5 a month and continues it, mm-hmm. at least he feels he's repairing the damage. And for my money, that's as much a part of rehabilitation as just being content to lock him up or a fine to the state for court costs. How does that help the victim? Mm-hmm. I think we ought to make it a part of regular probation and parole and prison programs.